how do we have our animal agriculture go from one of the most destructive systems on the planet to a system that actually is healing and healthy. And so that really has been the mission and calling that's been put in my heart, to be a voice, a messenger, to have that awakening happen. Because it was literally like a spiritual epiphany when I went from kind of the sustainability viewpoint of just trying to do less harm to how does my action create a proliferation of health and a continuum of healing.
Hey, it's your girl Koya Webb here on the Get Loved Up podcast, and I am here with Ryan Englehart, and he is the owner of Cafe Gratitude. Amazing, longtime friend of mine. I think it's been almost like 13 years.
13 years.
If not more. Wow, thank you for coming on today.
Mm-hmm.
I have so much I want to talk about, so much. But I really want to start with, how did you come about Cafe Gratitude? It's such a beautiful initiative. And if you guys have not been to Cafe Gratitude, you come in, it's a beautiful plant-based vegan restaurant, amazing affirmations. When you come in, you feel the love, you feel, what am I grateful for? Which gratitude is a big thing here at Get Loved Up. And every time you order a meal, you are blessed with an affirmation. So can you please just tell me the journey and how this came about?
Absolutely. So Cafe Gratitude it's a family lineage. It's a business that has come from my father and stepmother, and now me and my brother took it over essentially 8 years ago and brought it to Los Angeles. But the initial inspiration some 15 years ago was really not about food at all. It was really that gratitude was the mission and the message on my parents' hearts.
Right.
They had come through their different journeys of healing and transformation. My dad had a big clothing manufacturing business that he sold. My mom left him for another woman, and his life kind of went into turmoil, and his life fell apart. He ended up going to a program called the Landmark Forum, which you've probably heard of.
Absolutely.
And that was, I had actually done it when I was 18 years old, and it had been very, very impactful and transformative for me. My dad was like, oh yeah, I already know that stuff, and had no interest into it until his life fell apart. He ended up going through it, meeting Terces, who was leading programs at Landmark. They fell in love. They got married. They were too old to have kids. They spent a year really visioning what they wanted to give their lives to. And the thing that continued to come under their hearts was, how do we make gratitude more part of the fabric of our culture? And the idea, the inspiration that emerged was to create a transformational board game. Called the Abounding River board game, which is similar to like Life or Monopoly. You sit around with friends and family, but instead of charging people to stay in your hotels like Monopoly, you would pull a card about your self-worth, and you'd answer the question, where do you doubt yourself in your life right now?
Wow.
Share with the other players.
Where's that game?
You can buy it. You can still buy it on Amazon.
I want to check it out.
And so the genesis of Cafe Gratitude was really, can we bring people into this very simple yet unpracticed practice of that your life is a picture of your mind, and your life is a picture of where your attention is or where your awareness is. And that's why gratitude is so powerful, because gratitude brings our attention and awareness to something that already is full. So we go from a diffuse awareness to pointing it towards something that is fulfilling, that is great, that is enough,
Right.
and then we're welled up with that enoughness when that was there 5 minutes before, but our awareness wasn't there, so we didn't have that experience.
I love that.
And so that was the essence, the genesis, the inspiration, the transformation, the gift, the mission of what we wanted to create with Cafe Gratitude, was a place that people would walk into, and through the service, the food, the art, the interaction, the engagement, people's would shift from I'm not enough, something's not enough, the monkey mind that's oftentimes degrading ourselves down, and for a moment can we, through guiding people's awareness to something that they're grateful for with that question, what are you grateful for?
Right.
Or saying, you are beautiful,
Right.
You are amazing.
Right.
And yes, people could say, well, that's hokey, or that's, that affirmations don't matter, don't make any difference, but whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right.
Right.
So that's an affirmation. The affirmations don't work. You're right. They don't work for you because you're affirming they don't work.
Right.
But just when our mind and our orthodoxy and our thinking is so driven towards this or that, yeah, we're going to find the evidence in our world to validate that, and to such that we're going to experience that is the truth of life. And so we wanted Cafe Gratitude to be a little haven for people to walk in and not only be, put clean, food is medicine, healthy, organic, plant-based, 100% organic ingredients, whole foods, unprocessed foods, the best ingredients that we could come by.
Right.
But that was almost the carrot to get people in the door. The food was just the carrot to get people in the door. Really, the bigger intention was to bring the practice and the state of awareness that gratitude is a moment-to-moment choice. And by given the choice of being asked the question, what do you love about your life? You go from I'm not enough, something's wrong, something's missing, which is kind of where our mind is oftentimes scanning,
Right.
and brings us back into, and I'll just ask you, what moves you from your head to your heart?
I love that. Love moves me. And I like that question, like, where is your awareness? And my awareness is love and love consciousness. That's what moves me. Love that I'm receiving, love that I'm giving, love that I'm feeling. And I think you're right, that gratitude brings your awareness back. So if I am feeling down, if I am feeling a funk, if you have the awareness of gratitude, it's like, oh, it brings you right back to love. Instead of fear, instead of doubt, instead of worry, all those things. So tell me what, with this gratitude, with this restaurant.
Yeah. So
go ahead. Were you going to expand on?
So essentially that was the genesis.
Okay.
That was 15 years ago. We had an 8-year run where we opened 7 restaurants in the Bay Area.
Wow.
6 Cafe Gratitudes, 1 Gracias Madre, which is also ours as well. All organic, all plant-based. Gracias Madre was a beautiful story in that we went to Mexico to visit family members of our employees, and went back for a wedding for one of our longtime Mexican employees, and we went back to this small town called Tortuga, which means turtle, and they said they hadn't been gringos in this town in 25 years since puppeteers had come through, and
wow.
We went to this small Pueblo town and celebrated this wedding. And on that trip, we were so loved up, speaking of loved up, get loved up, by the mamacitas, the mothers of many of our employees who were back in the States. And that just our reverence for Mother Earth, and our reverence for the mother who's been setting the table, and our love for Mexican cuisine and the flavor of the corns, the beans, the squash, and the combination of flavors, cilantro, avocado, just Mexican food.
So good.
And our commitment to organic ingredients, kind of all that merged to this idea, this insight of thank you, Mother, Gracias Madre, thank you to Mother Earth, thank you to Mother who's been setting the table, and thank you to the Divine Mother that lives within our hearts, that is the qualities of the Mother that men and women embody.
I love that.
So that was, again, first chapter was 2004 to 2010. We opened 7 restaurants in the Bay Area. And then we had a partnership with a husband and wife from here in Los Angeles. We came down to Los Angeles 8 years ago and opened our first location on Larchmont. And that was like, and really the vision of coming to Los Angeles was very specific. And that was when I came down here, when I met you at Agape and such. And really we came on a mission. We came on a mission to come to Los Angeles, which I consider in a lot of ways the belly of the beast. And if we can create healing in the belly, then we can have healing in the totality of the body. And as we start to know more about health and wellness and the importance of the gut flora in our microbiome, and if we don't have good gut flora, then we can't have a good healthy immune system. We can't have good synapse in our brain. That so much is connected to the gut. Right. And so that if we could actually create healing in the belly of the beast, Los Angeles, and demonstrate a new model of business, which we call sacred commerce, which is the model of business that we operate under within Cafe Gratitude and Gracias, Madre, and we could demonstrate that in Los Angeles, so much of what happens in Los Angeles gets broadcast and it becomes the cultural kind of aspiration around the world. And a lot of that cultural aspiration is, I would say, very superficial and not necessarily heart-centered and meaningful. It's very facade-based. And so the vision was to come to Los Angeles and demonstrate not only a healthy model of business, but also a healthy model of community, a healthy model of living and eating, and being together, and also just a healthy attitude, and that a business can actually have an attitude and a way of being beyond just the products that that business sells. And so, that in a nutshell. We've been here for 8 years in Los Angeles, and we've opened 7 restaurants under 3 names. And
And what was the third one?
Gratitude, where I see you all the time, Gratitude Kitchen and Bar in Beverly Hills, and then in Newport Beach. So it's just a slight variation from Cafe Gratitude, but because it has a full bar, alcoholic bar, and then the evening menu is a lot more it's a slightly higher end, more fine dining, elevated experience as far as the food quality, not food quality, but the presentation.
Right. And what about Sage? I thought there was a connection there.
Sage is my sister. So my biological birth sister, my only birth sister, is named Molly Englehart, and she's the owner and chef of Sage.
But that's completely separate.
Completely separate business, but it's still a family.
Yeah. Awesome.
People have called us the vegan mafia.
I love it. It's hilarious.
So that's in a nutshell. The big picture of Cafe Gratitude and where we've come from. And
well, congratulations! It's such a beautiful space. The energy is high vibe. When I go in there, I just feel good. I have many birthday parties there. I remember we made the Rapture, the strawberry Rapture. I think it's strawberry and amaretto, delicious cake.
This was at what location?
This
is not the one. Okay, I was trying to think. No, it was at Venice. Okay.
Yeah, Venice, maybe 5 years ago. It was so good. It was delicious. And so I kind of want to just talk more about the plant-based part. I know being plant-based is really important for all the restaurants. All the restaurants are vegan plant-based, and talk a little bit about that and how important that is in the community.
Totally. So, I've been mostly a plant-based, nourished, and I was born vegan, vegetarian, and depending on my parents' spiritual teacher throughout my life, it was the extreme variation of that.
Right.
Varied, but essentially that's been the diet of my life, and ultimately of my family. One thing that emerged somewhat controversially about 4 years ago was that, actually just going back beyond that, we, again, vegetarian, my dad was vegetarian for 40 years. He started farming. And he kind of had this at maybe 10 years ago went back, or 12 years ago went back to the land and started farming. And really started to farm, and he went to the farm as a raw vegan.
Right.
And he started farming, and he started, connecting with farmers and learning how to grow biodynamically, organically, and how to create fertility on the land, and really understanding the cycle of how fertility cycles and how to keep a piece of land healthy. And what he started to learn by trial and error was that nature always has been a partnership of plants and animals. Like that, it's in this partnership of plants and animals that have allowed forests to maintain health, that have allowed grasslands to maintain health. For instance, if you think about like a big plains, whether it's in this country or in Africa, plains have always had grass-eating animals, and grass-eating animals being moved by a predator-prey relationship, whether it was lions or coyotes or wolves. And essentially it's in that kind of movement of animals on that landscape that ultimately allows for that landscape to stay healthy. The moment you kill there's no predators, you become over-proliferation of life, over-proliferation of one species. They start to degrade the ground, there becomes an erosion, and ultimately the system becomes out of balance. So when we started to learn that on our farm, our 21-acre farm, we started to realize, oh wow, to keep this farm healthy, we need cows. Otherwise, we were going to be, shipping in cow manure or fish emulsion or other nutrients that ultimately came from either animals that were dead or manure that was coming from animals that were in CAFO situations, confined animal feedlot operations, which is the worst of the worst kind of holocaust of treatment towards animals. And so it's like, all right, well, we don't want to support that system. What made the most sense is to have our own cows on our farm, and those cows could graze that on that grass and return that fertility into the soil, because the sun allows grass to grow, and ultimately cows can get nutrition from that grass, and then they can put fertility back into the soil, which then can grow the crops that we are desire to eat.
Right.
But after doing that for some time, and the whole thing of a farm is everything is an equation of give and take. Everything has to, everything, there's inputs and there's outputs. And on having that farm there, when we started to milk the cows and got into raw milk, and they were in and then they got into we had chickens, because when you have lots of compost, you can have you can feed your compost to the chickens eat it, and they turn that into egg protein, and for the people that eat eggs, that becomes a valuable ability to cycle and return those nutrients into a usable form of energy for the people who are living on that farm. So all that to say, as they started to farm, they started to see, wow, there's not this clear separation of like, we just want to grow vegetables and we just only want to deal with vegetables. Because if you looked a little bit before, how do you get the nitrogen to grow those vegetables? That nitrogen came oftentimes from the decomposition of an animal, or the manure from an animal that was part of a system of life and death. And so that led to us going through the process of, we have one cow that had a blood disease and another full-grown male that we didn't have room for on our farm. And some people do eat meat on our farm, and instead of having those people go to Safeway and getting meat from whoever knows where in whatever condition, it felt the most honoring and the most the most honoring to actually take this into our own hands and do this with the most consciousness and the most awareness. And we ended up killing 2 cows on our farm. And we told the story about it on our Be Love Farm blog, and it became, it felt like a betrayal to the vegan community. And while I totally get that, when you play a role of a leader in a certain community, and then a leader makes a choice that you don't agree with, it kind of, it's kind of shaking, it's shattering, and I get that, but the truth was, we were, specifically my father was on his journey of being vegetarian for 40 years, started to grow, becoming a farmer, understanding that there was a bigger cycle that he was a part of, and there was more nuance, intricacies to growing food, organic vegetables, which he thought he was completely sort of, if he was only eating those vegetables, he wasn't participating in death, or he wasn't contributing to death. And when he started to really get into the nuts and bolts of that, he saw that it wasn't that clear. And another place that this has been exemplified is in Hindu culture in India, where they have a lot of reverence for the cow, and there is no, or traditional Hindus don't eat meat, but they do drink milk. But then, the situation with that is that they have male cows in that situation of, birthing cows for milk, because you always have to have a baby cow if you want milk, because ultimately that milk is designed to go to a baby cow. And in that situation, every other cow, you're going to have maybe a male cow, which ultimately doesn't provide milk. And in that system in India, those cows are oftentimes given or sold to, other cultures, Muslims, that don't have the reverence for the cow, and ultimately those cows get killed for meat, and so it was kind of a complete shattering of a worldview for me, for us, as being vegan vegetarian for my whole life, 35 years up until that point, and another big driver for me was I had this huge kind of awakening, transformation around soil being this basis for life on planet Earth. And how do we rebuild and regenerate our soil, because our current agricultural system says that the United Nations says that we have about 60 years left before all agricultural land is denuded of life and has no more ability to produce any food.
So do you think this is a solution? Is this something that you're ongoingly practicing and believe that is a solution for farming?
I think that partnership with animals is essential to regenerate land. And I think, as far as what I hold up as the kind of priority billboards, I think eat more plants, plant-based, plant-rich diet as like the upper billboard, because 95% of what meat and dairy is produced in this country and the world is a complete desecration. And so we have to swing way in the direction towards a plant-rich or plant-based diet. But again, to what I've discovered humbly in the process of my father going and starting a farm, and me starting a nonprofit all about the interconnection between plants, animals, soils, humans, the whole ecological system, is that regenerative agriculture is the only way that we can have a future food system. And an essential way to have regenerative agriculture work is the partnership of plants, animals, and humans, because all healthy ecosystems have had animals and plants as part of a cyclical circle system that has life continue to stay healthy and not degrade over time. So so that's...
Do you feel like as humans that we would degrade, or we wouldn't be healthy? Let's say if of course, you mentioned that you can get already dead cow, or the cow can be recycled in something way, or like, and as you said, it builds if you have the cow, then you have the milk, and it just builds. So is there a way to have a farming system, from what you now know,
yes,
where it is like 100% that you can run it and you can use animals in conjunction with animals, but without necessarily, let's say, milking the cow and having the eggs and then having the chicken? Is it possible to run a farm and maybe you use the animal in cooperation with animals? You're using the cow to eat the grass, provide the manure.
Totally possible, just not possible in the economic framework that we live in.
And so what do you feel like, so that's something that is going on now, that's how you farm presently. And do you feel like you have any advice? Because I feel like a lot of people that I heard from that were really really upset about the situation really doesn't understand. I feel like the understanding, because everyone's not a farmer, and I think understanding the possibilities available for us, because a lot of people aren't vegan plant-based and they don't eat a lot of vegan plant-based food because they feel like, well, is this something that I can sustain? So the question and what I give people, as being vegan, is that yes, you can, and here is how. And so I guess my question to you, because I know how to maintain my body, my health, my vitality with a plant-based vegan diet.
Yeah.
And so I do not, however, know how to farm and turn an ecosystem, even though my ancestors, Native American mostly, and African American, did the type of farming, especially Native Americans, where they honored the animals. But we know that's not happening most of the time. So I like your answer. That's why it's important to be predominantly plant-based, because a lot of people that do it appropriately, like your family and like some of my ancestors and families I'm still connected to, they do have a sacred way of honoring the animal and honoring it, but most people don't do that. And so with that being out there, what do we have to give people? Two things. What do we have to give people and farmers who want to do it in that mindful way? And what do we have to give people who just don't want to honor those people who are doing it that way, but also know that most of the world isn't like that, and most of the world needs to eat and find out how to eat and survive on, as you said, a plant-based diet? And do you still believe that, even? Because I don't want to put words into your mouth.
Yeah. So, I mean, the shift that's needed is a big shift for how we treat each other, how we treat plants, trees, animals. The thing that's been most inspiring to me recently is this idea of interbeing. That how do we be that what I do to you, I do to myself. And there's a beautiful quote by a gentleman named Wendell Berry, who is sort of a godfather of sort of natural farming, and he was also a writer about kind of what happened to this country and kind of how industrial agriculture took over this country. It says, every day we break the body and spill the blood of creation. If we do it knowingly, reverently, and carefully, it is a sacrament. And if we do it with greed, gluttony, and carelessness, it is a desecration. So most of what we do is pretty unconscious. And I think the fact that we're being conscious enough to say, I don't want to participate in the confined animal feedlot operations, which are the most despicable, one of the most despicable things that I think we'll look upon like we look upon slavery, or the way we look upon the way we've treated certain cultures in our past. And I think that we will at some point look at, I can't believe we treated animals in the way that we did. So I think that the choice, the conscious choice of choosing to abstain from participating in that system is a very conscious and beautiful choice. And as someone who lives in an urban environment and has the abundance of, organic fruits and vegetables at their whim, I think that's a healthy, amazing opportunity and choice that we can make to live as a plant-based vegan individual. When I look at like the meta picture of how we can not only just heal or sustain or have less impact on the planet, because clearly to eat a plant-based diet is going to have a huge, it's a much smaller footprint on water, on fossil fuels, on deforestation, on methane gas, greenhouse gases. So there's so many wins to eating a plant-based diet. I think there's a book called Drawdown, which is the 100 most important solutions to reversing climate change. And the number 3 or 4 solution is what he calls a plant-rich diet.
I thought it was number 1. Or number 3 or 4. Okay.
Yeah. So it's an absolutely essential cultural shift that we need to start building our diets where the vegetables are the majority of the food on our plate, if not the totality. I mean, it's a win. It's a win on so many levels. The thing that, again, I've just started to humbly understand over the last 5 or 6 years, with my father going back to farming, me starting to really dig into, big picture ecological systems, how carbon cycles, how water cycles, how ecosystems work, and seeing the importance of we've desertified, we've turned 1/3 of the agricultural land that we've grown on into desert. And the most effective, quick way to reverse and regenerate that land is through the partnership of having animals back in those regions, taking the fertility that's been almost completely brittle and gone away, and having through that animals roving and grazing those areas help bring fertility. And I mean, it's miraculous what you can see when you see an environment that looks completely desolate, and then you see ranchers who are essentially grazing animals in this, what they call adaptive grazing, and in a relatively short period of time, 3 years, deserts turning back into fertile grasslands. And just not eating meat wouldn't do that, wouldn't regenerate that living ecosystem.
Even if it died and it still fertilized the ground, someone would have to eat the meat, is what you're saying.
Well, if someone's tending to and taking care of those animals and they're part of a domestic system, yeah, I mean, someone is at some, those cows are someone is gonna eat those cows. Or if it was a natural system and it was just, let's say, water buffalo or something like that, obviously there would be, those buffalo would be being moved and kind of driven to rotate and traverse the land based on being moved by a predator-prey relationship between.
So other animals would eat them and return them to the earth. So
right.
It's not really necessary that we eat them. We can choose to if we want to, if I'm hearing correctly, or we can choose to allow the natural cycle to happen, and the animal either way is going to return, and that delicate cycle would continue. Is that what
absolutely?
You say that was?
Yeah, I mean, in all natural systems, to have balance, there's going to be a cycling, and human beings in many parts of the world don't need to participate in that, especially because there's such abundance of other food. In certain areas, where there isn't vegetable, there, that is the only, animals are the only, whether it's, northern Inuit cultures who, feed primarily on whale blubber or in desert cultures that, there's no vegetables to be found. But for much of the world that you and I traverse, urban centers, this country, there's lots of places, and people don't need to participate, without a doubt, participate in eating meat. Again, as I said, I think the primary billboard is eat more plants, eat a plant-rich diet, eat a plant-based diet, eat a vegan diet, and I've had a calling to really understand how we can regenerate and heal areas that we've completely broken, and regeneration, and this idea of regeneration clearly relies on this interconnected partnership between working with animals and having them be a catalyst to bringing life back to land that agriculture and poor management of that land has actually degraded and destroyed.
And what do you feel about, I know they have like aerial gardens and technology is increasing every day, and now they have these whole ecosystems that are happening without animals. What do you feel about those? Have you looked into those at all, or what do you think about those systems?
I think that I think we need solutions on all fronts. I think there's I'm not an anti-technology person. I don't think we're going back to the Stone Ages. As far as the nutritional value of hydroponic fruits and vegetables, there's still a lot of debate around, how do you, the value is like they use no land because you can do them 3D, they require 80% less water, great, but essentially you're still putting nutrients that are coming from some organic sources, some being animal, and some being, just mineral, whether it's, minerals coming from the earth, but ultimately creating these biological or even chemical fertilizers that are ultimately feeding a plant that then we eat. I think that there's value there, but I don't think that, to me it's like, it doesn't feel like the world that I want to be a part of is like living in concrete bunkers, eating food that comes, from machine lights and layers. Just like that. That picture of the world is not the picture of the world that I'm envisioning. I'm envisioning a more harmonious relationship with all living things. And that we start designing our infrastructure and our relationship to the design of our cities and the design of our systems and our food system to really honor life. And in honoring life, there is, that includes death, because we all are living and dying and becoming the food for something else.
Right. Yeah, it's very interesting, and I'm glad we were able to dive deep about this, because I feel like that, gives me more of an understanding of farming and, natural farming and things like that. And I guess my mind keeps saying like, okay, I see the natural farming, I see the hydroponic farming, I see most of the farming that's happening now, which is absolutely 110% abusive and really, really, really bad. And I see that being fed to most people, especially poor people. And for me, I'm not vegan because I don't think I'll be healthy if I eat a piece of cow or chicken or egg or anything like that. I probably get the happiest cow and the best grade of chicken and things like that because I can afford it. But I feel like the people that don't have the resources are getting the worst type of food. And my mission in being plant-based and being vegan and in that is more because I do feel like it is more sustainable and it is healthier for, as you said, plant-based diet being healthier for most of the world. And I do, even after listening to you and listening to other people, I still feel that on this plant-based diet and having our bodies return to the soil when we die, having animals' bodies return to the soil when we die, and learning how to farm in that way without necessarily consuming humans or animals, that it could create a healthy ecosystem. I mean, that could be totally living in a dream. Again, I'm not a farmer, but that is my wondering if that is a possibility, because I feel like, and looking at like the ecosystems and things like that, like, is that possible? And I imagine like your dad, when he started farming, he was looking into that same thing. Like, is it possible? And I feel like that is like a question that I feel like I still want to know if it is possible to live in a world where, we're all living and we're dying and we're going through this similar cycle, and we can experience the benefits, all the benefits of consuming the fruits, the vegetables, the grains, the things like this, the herbs, without the animal consumption, and live in this cycle of life harmoniously. That's something that I'm really excited about, and I'm glad you've given me a little bit of insight. But my biggest concern is that this ecosystem that you have in your family, if it's possible to have that all around the world. And like you said, some places all they can eat is just a little animal. They don't have as much fruits and vegetables and grains and things like that. And I feel like no matter what, there will be those places, but I still feel like the most sustainable is a plant-based diet and plant-based farming. And I just want to know that's possible. I think that's part of me, and probably a lot of people listen who are plant-based feel the same way. And probably some of the people that attack you, which I would never attack you, and I'm always going to eat at your restaurants. And I am also happy that it's still 100% plant-based. And I think some of the questions was like, oh, are things going to be coming in? Is animal going to be coming in? And I think that's something that some people had a concern with. Are the restaurants going to stay 100% vegan, plant-based? Are there going to be introduction of animals? And my question to you is this dream world that I'm thinking in my head, there are some farmers farming in that way and doing it successfully, because I feel like non-judgment. I feel like however people want to live and farm and be is their prerogative. But I also feel like talking about it on a level where we're talking about everybody in the world involved, and we have this sense of oneness with the animals, with the nature, everything. Is it possible, from what you know, I know like in every place, but is it possible to have this sustainable way of respecting the cycle of life, allowing our bodies and animals' bodies to return to the land without the consumption of one another, and still have that healthy, fertile ground and enough for everyone to be fed and nurtured? That's the question I have. I don't know if you have an answer for that.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously a huge question, but I think it comes down to, do we think that it's not correct, or is, like a cat needs many animals, that just their inherent way of being is many animals require meat as part of their diet, and they get sick if they don't have it. I think human beings have the possibility of being plant-based and healthy, and being and eating some meat and being healthy. So I think that really the big question is
it sustainable? That's the big question, like sustainability. I think we both agree that yes, you can be healthy having a little bit of animal, but is that sustainable?
Again, back to sustainability is the ability to use a resource without fully using it up. And I think, and my understanding is that the current system of how we produce meat and dairy is very unsustainable.
Right. We're using it up, using up
That's
too
right.
much animal,
That's right.
too much land.
That's right. to go to a plant-based diet is a reduction of that consumptive degenerative system. But the challenge is it kind of zigzags, because yes, it's less consumptive to eat a plant-based diet, but we've already destroyed 1/3 of the planet based on bad agriculture, monocropping as well as animal agriculture and deforestation. And to regenerate that, we actually need animals to do that. And we can't just hope that our kind of reserves in Africa and the water buffalo go to all these other areas of the world. No, it's going to have to require a partnership of human beings saying, all right, this is a degenerated huge piece of land. We're going to actually set out to put return grassland to this desert, and we're going to use the partnership of animals and humans moving those animals around that area to help regenerate and
can't you just bury them all around without eating them? Just like the cow dies, you just bury it.
But on some level, that's actually dishonoring. That someone gets to, someone's going to be nourished, whether small.
We're not eating people. We just get buried. I'm just asking. I'm
totally. Exactly. I mean, we get buried, and
no one eats us.
Well,
well, some people do. Some people
not people. Not people. No. But organisms and nature will take us. Well, yeah. So I mean, the question is, right now there's many people that are eating meat that is a completely destructive system.
Right.
And we need these animals to help regenerate our broken landscapes.
Right.
So as we transition and people become more and more attentive to eating meat from this very destructive system, is destructive for the earth, for our bodies, for disturbing treatment of animals. And we go more to a plant-based diet, hooray. But at a certain point, and again, we're talking, the opportunity of regeneration, the opportunity of how to use regenerative agriculture as not only just a way to heal landscapes, but actually reverse global warming. This is like the big implication, the big opportunity, which is, cows have been seen as this kind of hummer against the environment, and their methane gas, which is a lot true when cows are living in their feces, living in a feedlot. But when they're living in a natural ecosystem where they're grazing on grass their whole life, there's organisms and there's biology that actually can absorb and feeds off of that methane gas that they're producing, which actually creates some proliferation and more health within the ecosystem that is below where those cows are grazing. So the question is not, the big question is, are we okay with people eating meat or are we not? Because people do eat meat at this point.
Right.
And if they are going to eat meat, the opportunity of having them choose consciously to eat meat that was from cows that were actually healing and creating more life in an ecosystem, and that those cows were then, when they were killed with the honor that they played a really important role, and now they're going to play an important role in feeding and nourishing human beings' bodies. And
so what do you feel like? Do you feel like meat causes acidity in your body? Because I personally feel like meat causes acidity in your body. And so if someone chooses it, that's their choice. But I don't think it's not necessarily the healthiest thing to choose, which is why my question is, can we choose to not eat it? Because I don't think personally, again, I'm always studying and learning, but I don't feel personally like it's the healthiest thing to eat. So though I don't always eat the healthiest thing, even as a vegan, I'm eating pizza and ice cream and all these things as vegan, because that is the mission and philosophy that I want to live by in this lifetime. But my question and my thing is, I truly believe that the philosophy of it although understandable and respectable and respected by me, I don't think it's the healthiest thing for our bodies or the planet. And so that's why I'm trying to understand a way in which we can still use the animal in the cycle of life and give the bodies and the animals back. And if someone wants to eat it, fine. But I don't necessarily think that's something that I would ever promote, because I don't think it's the most sustainable for our personal health or the health of the planet. And when you talk about, agriculture and doing things on a big scale, we're still going to have, we're going to be over consuming and more people and more population. So if that's the way everyone's eating to sustain this farming, then there's just going to be more and more of it. Where I do believe if we are using the animals, recycling the bodies and the parts and moving it and nurturing the soil all around using animals and feces and the cycle of life, without consuming it necessarily, I feel like that might be a quicker way and a healthier way, and consuming plant-based, as you mentioned, to return the earth to this more harmonious state. I'm not a farmer, but in my head, from what I've heard, that's what I feel would be healthier, because I definitely see the effects of course, the worse and the more hormones pumped, the worse it is on your body. But I also feel like in small quantities, not a problem, but in big quantities it is a problem. And if we start doing this all over the world, it'll be in bigger quantities. And I feel like the philosophy and people, again, not having access, and would it be quicker, I guess what I'm thinking while you're talking is, would it be quicker to transition to this plant-based ecosystem and way of farming that would sustain the land and sustain the people? Or would it be quicker to get everyone to farm in this way where they're doing it in balance, which is kind of not the American way? And so to me, in my mind, I feel like it would be, again, and I like that we're having this conversation just talking about it, but I feel like the faster way is, and the healthier way is, to have people to consume, fruits, vegetables, nuts and seeds, everything that's provided for us, and learn this natural cycle of farming, not necessarily consuming animals or their parts or secretions and things like that, because I do see, and I've seen how detrimental that can be, even when it's done for some people in moderation, even when it's done on a small level. So that's kind of where I'm sitting with it, just wondering, would it be faster and more economical to move forward with the plant-based farming without consumption than it would be with the consumption? Again, I respect people that do consume, but I still, just from what I've studied, feel like it would be healthier for our world and us also personally to find out a way to farm. And I have some land in Tennessee, and I've been talking to my brother about starting farms. I'll get to see it firsthand if we actually decide to do that. But yeah, that's kind of my big question right now. Like, is it possible? And I know it's probably, once you get, okay, this is possible, but then this is economical, and, how do we, cycle the money, and like what is profitable and what's not. I know all of that gets tied in there. And that's why we have what we have, is because people have put the money before the land. And I just want to know, based on my studies, that can we maintain the highest health and the highest health of our land in this plant-based environment?
Yeah, I mean, I think, to me, it's, we have a very short time window of, some could, everything can be argued, but from the deepest part of my heart and what I believe to be true and the pathway forward is that we need to eat far more of a plant-based diet. And the way that we do agriculture, even in the way that we're growing vegetables and grains and legumes, is we need to integrate animals into that system so that we can actually rely on nature to fertilize our food versus synthetic fertilizers. When we separated animal farming and vegetable and crop farming, that's when we started to really break the system down. Right. We need to reintegrate those. at this point, the cultural the cultural relationship to meat is something that I don't think that it's going away. Even as powerful and amazing as the growth of the plant-based movement, I think that we're going to continue to have many parts of the world, still, having meat as part of their diet. But if we can see that system of agriculture going from a really, really negatively destructive thing to actually something that's healing, yes, maybe some of those animals are still being killed for meat, but simultaneously there's a movement of a plant-based diet is becoming a greater understanding that wants to be a larger part of your plate. There's an understanding of agriculture coming from out of the CAFO system into the adaptive regenerative grazing system, and so people are going more plant-based, and then what the meat that they are eating is coming through a system of agriculture which is a regenerative system of holistic management and grazing animals on a land that mimics bison grazing the Great Plains. That is, to me, what feels like the clearest and most realistic pathway forward.
And what about the restaurants? Where restaurants remain to be plant-based, vegan?
Absolutely.
Or,
absolutely. The restaurants, they started plant-based, and they will remain to be vegan plant-based restaurants. We do use honey in the restaurants. We actually, this is a funny time to bring this up, but we just launched an initiative called Meatless Mondays, which is kind of funny because we're meatless 7 days a week. But really the invitation is to invite the omnivore, the carnivore, someone who thinks that they can't, they're not into plant-based food, and just giving them the option of, hey, it makes an impact to just reduce your meat consumption, whether it's just 1 day a week, and to make that more accessible and affordable and delicious. We're saying every week we offer 2 items that are 50% off, so we pick up half the bill for those that are newcomers and wanting to come and try and have a plant-based meal.
Well, I'm coming.
Yeah.
Too.
So I know. So it's actually Meatless Mondays today.
I love it. We can go to Meatless Mondays right after this and get 50% off. Just for newcomers or everybody?
Everybody.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, everybody.
I know where I'm going to eat after.
Yeah. So again, the mission of the of Cafe Gratitude will remain a plant-based eatery, and really that is what Cafe Gratitude originally was and will continue to be. Right. What we've continued to learn about agriculture and about farming, again, we're telling the truth of what we've learned along the way. And maybe 5 years from now, I may have some new information, something different, but I want to stay humble and learn and not pretend like, I learned this one dogma and I'm going to stick to that forever, because I just don't think that's, that's honest. It feels.
And that's one thing I appreciate. I appreciate your honesty, and I do appreciate the restaurants being vegan, plant-based, because I feel like we do need more of those examples out there for people to see how a full menu and how a full meal and how a full dessert can be maintained. I think that's so beautiful, so I'm so happy for that. And I also, again, appreciate your honesty as you're learning, sharing that with us so we could talk about it, so people can feel it. And I think that's what it's all about, just conversation, and everyone goes through those journeys. And I know when it was brought to me, I was like, well, my whole family, eats meat. My sister just, became predominantly plant-based, and I think it's, again, better for the health. But I also feel like you have to allow people to explore, to transition, to be. And I think love is the constant. Love for people, respect for people, love for animals, respect for animals, and love for the planet and respect for that. And so, I really just appreciate what you've created, you and your family at all these restaurants. Appreciate your honesty about your journey. And I definitely recommend everyone go and try out all the cafes and support and eat, and also just have these conversations around like the planet and farming and what we can do as a community. And you have, a huge initiative called Kiss the Ground. And I want you to kind of tell us a little bit about that.
Beautiful, thank you. So 7 years ago, I was in New Zealand. I saw 6 experts talking about, can we sustain ourselves on planet Earth? 5 out of 6 said no, it's too far gone. The 6th said what they're saying is true, but there's a blind spot in the conversation, and that blind spot is soil. We mostly think through technological solutions, but if we could think of ourselves as part of nature, we could think of ourselves in ecological solutions. If we could see trees and grasses and plants as our allies, and that soil is the greatest storage shed for carbon on the planet, and that we could pull enough carbon out of the atmosphere and put it back into the ground through our agriculture, that would be the greatest opportunity, and is the greatest opportunity that we have as human beings on planet Earth. And it was just like, just an explosion in my heart of like, I could see a path, I could see a way forward. And I just really got, wow, I saw that even just the idea of sustainability, sustaining something that was broken, wouldn't work. What was the path of regeneration and renewal and healing? And that was what kind of went this deep investigation and understanding around soil and agriculture and how to build soil. We used to think it'd take 1,000 years to build in half an inch of topsoil. And then we started to learn that through different farming practices, whether through the putting a biodiverse combination of plants on one piece of land, or doing a rotation of crops, or cover cropping, or having animal integration, animals grazing on the land, or planting more trees on the land, you had this ability to sequester carbon that's in the atmosphere down into the soil.
Right.
Through those plants, and that we could actually reverse the problem. We could actually reverse climate change. I was just like, that's crazy. That's phenomenal. Why is that not the most? Why is that not being the cover story everywhere? That we can actually work with nature to reverse the damage that we've done. I mean, that was like, wow, that is compelling. So that kind of ushered me down the road of Kiss the Ground, which became an education and advocacy nonprofit that was started in my living room. I gathered people in my living room for every Monday for a year, saying, how can we change the story, the narrative around human beings, our relationship to the planet, that we've been branded as consumers. If we're just consuming the planet, we're destined to destroy our planet. If we don't actually have a reciprocity relationship with the planet, we will just consume ourselves out of house and home. We will locus ourselves on the planet. And so, again, the compelling big idea was that there's too much carbon up here.
Right.
We can put that carbon back into our soil, and we can do it with our food choices, that what we eat can actually be that mechanism that sequesters carbon.
Right.
Because we're voting with our dollars for food that is regeneratively grown, which regenerative agriculture means that it regenerates the resources while it produces a crop or a food from that land. And so, we launched something called The Soil Story, which was a kind of a short form piece of media that went, somewhat viral 7 years ago, and has become a communication tool all over the world for explaining how regeneration or regenerative agriculture works. And we've continued to develop educational curriculums for 6th grade students, and training teachers how to train youth kids about this horizon of how we can work with nature, that we can sequester carbon, that there's actually a hopeful pathway forward. Because right now it's just kind of like, all right, we have 410 parts per million of carbon in the atmosphere. IPCC report says we have 11 years left until, it's too late. And, we have the Paris Agreement that says, all right, we're going to, get to 2 degrees, raising. And all this kind of looks like just kind of being on the defense and defending something that may have already gotten out of our hands. Mm-hmm. Whereas the concept and understanding of regeneration is, how do we interact with nature? How do we plant biodiverse forests again? How do we create our agricultural land as a carbon sink versus a carbon source? How do we have our animal agriculture go from one of the most destructive systems on the planet to a system that actually is healing and healthy? And so that really has been the mission and calling that's been put on my heart, to be a voice, a messenger, to have that awakening happen, because it was literally like a spiritual epiphany when I went from kind of the sustainability viewpoint of just trying to do less harm to, how does my action create a proliferation of health and a continuum of healing. And back to the concept of love. Love is the greatest regenerative source of energy on the planet, because it gives and it doesn't expect anything in return. It gives knowing that its gift is this ongoing continuum of service. And so, Kiss the Ground, we were about we just about 90% done on a feature-length film featuring Woody Harrelson as the narrator as for the doc. And it's really communicating the science and the large-scale examples of regenerative agriculture in this country and some abroad, showing that we, in a relatively short period of time, can heal our landscapes, that we can have our farming be more economical and more abundant for farmers, and that we can produce healthier, nutrient-dense food for people to thrive. And so this initiative is really what's been driving my inspiration, because yes, the restaurants are a very grounded example of being the change I wish to see in the world, and then Kiss the Ground is kind of that larger global landscape mission and commitment to
the agriculture,
to what's where's our food coming from, and how is that system.
And when is that? Do you have a release date?
We don't have a release date, but the goal is to have it out in the last quarter of 2009 or this year. Yeah.
Awesome! I'm excited. I can't wait to see it.
So,
and also you're a new father.
Yes.
And, you're married, you have a child. You want to talk a little bit about, how do you balance all of this work and family?
Thank you for that. I've been married 8 years. This is, my wedding ring says, "The search is over."
That's beautiful.
Love.
Right.
And the kind of inspiration from that was really this realization that love is an indwelling presence, and that if I am trying to seek love, if I'm trying to find love in the external world, I'll continuously be chasing. But love is right here within me, and that relationship is an opportunity of having love be shared with another, and can we practice this high ideal of oneness in a very practical way, of how can we have our life go from an individual agenda to a unified collective agenda. And my wife is amazing. She's total extraordinary, loving, compassionate, understanding being. And the way that we've definitely had our challenges, but we are committed to the work. And they say the work works if you work it.
I heard that. The work works if you work it.
And so, just like any relationship, there's challenges, there's, momentary battles of the ego, my way, right way, especially with the child in the equation. But there's just the practice of apology.
Apology is the best thing.
Yeah, apologizing when you see that you're clinging to your perspective and your way, and that your way is creating separation. And so just noticing when there's a rift and coming back in and checking in and asking, what's present, anything that I did that's having you feel invalidated or not seen, and allowing for that conversation to unfold, and being authentic and being humble, and, as we say, getting on our knees when we need to get on our knees and apologize for our arrogance or our
that's hard for a lot of men to say, so it's definitely eye-opening when especially as a man in a relationship, you say, I can apologize, I can admit when I'm wrong. And I think a lot of women really respect that, but a lot of relationships are like, oh well, time for divorce, like let's just stop it. So what advice can you give other entrepreneurs, young parents or new parents, to really help keep it together?
Yeah.
We got the apology.
Yeah.
I agree with that one. That's got to be number one.
So acknowledgement, appreciation. When we're in the in-love stage, the honeymoon stage, the new part of a relationship, we oh my God, we just admire everything that's happening. And then 6 months, 6 years goes by, and we just oftentimes start noticing, oh, I don't like how they smack their food, or I don't like how they and we just start to see what we don't like. And so just the practice of acknowledgement and seeing seeing the greatness, and using our voice and our articulation and our words to, we say to kids, use your words, use your words. Right. Adults, use your words. Acknowledge your wife. Right. Acknowledge your partner. Acknowledge their contribution to your life.
I love that.
And it's so easy to not make time for each other and just become roommates, become just operating in the same house, managing the kid, managing all the details. But it's so important to schedule time. Me and my wife just started scheduling time to sing together, where we'll sing devotional music, kirtan music, together, and ultimately the action of it just has us be in this creative and elated state of being, and then that kind of harmony creates this beautiful, energetic experience of love and connection for us personally, while we're doing something that we both enjoy to do. I'm not a great singer, she's actually a great singer, but it's scheduling time to do things together that allow you to be present and have each other get that each other is valued and important and seen. I think one of the biggest challenges in relationship is we stop seeing our partner. We start looking past them. We start wanting to be with other people, everybody but them. Right. And the other big piece of advice is, the moment we say you are this way, we're done. You're done. The moment you lock them in a cage of they are this particular way, they'll always be that way, then for the most part, that's going to have them feel completely trapped, completely unseen, and controlled, and ultimately it will lead to a deterioration of love, appreciation, connection, and ultimately intimacy. And so I think we got to be authentic. We got to be so authentic, and we got to get that authentic is about saying where you're full of it. I'm full of it. Like that's a landmark distinction. Is like authenticity isn't authenticity unless you're saying where you're full of shit. You know, where it's not just, oh, I'm feeling this way. It's like, no, I'm actually. I've been pretending. It's acknowledging where you've actually been lying.
Right. That's so powerful. That's so powerful. Like honesty. Like that's the biggest one, because we all have places where we. But
there's like a ledge of honesty that like looks good to be honest. Like like I know it's like cool to be honest. Right. But then there's a layer of like saying things. It's not cool to say what I'm thinking and what I've been thinking. That's the layer that you have to jump to.
That's the layer you got to get to in relationships. What? Tell me something. Okay, I know I'm putting you on blast right now. I'm just blasting you out the bar. Since you brought it up, where are you full of shit?
Where am I full of shit?
Where are you just stuff? It could be something that maybe you were full of shit and you're not anymore, but what is something that you really had to, you know what? Yeah, I had to admit that and...
So here's where I'm full of it. I talk about being like a courageous leader and like, but I'm completely like when it comes to like this whole idea of, you know, sharing your brand, who you are on Instagram, Facebook, I'm completely petrified of like stepping into that world and being a personality online. And I act like, I'm over it. I don't care about that. That's not for me. But really, I'm just completely petrified that I don't have anything valuable to say. So that's one area where I act like I'm totally confident. I know what I'm talking about. I have, you know, messages and mission and all this to share. But when it comes to like me just saying, all right, I'm gonna share a message that I'm really committed to, I completely am petrified to like step into that and own that.
Right. I think you did it today, though. I think you did a good job.
Cool.
So last thing, I know I've had you.
And I didn't say. Yeah, I just want to say.
Yes.
My son's 13 months.
And adorable.
Roomy Forest, Englehart, and what just fatherhood has been so good for me. So. So good for me. And actually, I'm realizing one other place that I've been full of it is that. For many years, I've been so exuberant and positive and knowing that I have eternal energy and gratitude and love. And I can see over the last 2 or 3 years, my light has been somewhat dimmed, and I haven't told the truth about that. I haven't told the truth that I've been kind of beaten up by the world and running a business and having 600 employees and, you know, corporate interests and you know, that's definitely been an area that I have been definite like beaten and burdened and can see that there's a bit of resignation that had kind of gotten over my shine, gotten over my spark. And so that's another area that I can see that I haven't been willing to just say, wow, I've been dulled, and to acknowledge it actually allows me to wake up and actually start deconstructing it. So yeah, it just was there for me to say. But yeah, back to my son. Fatherhood has been the greatest thing for me, and just that there's this place to pour pure love and energy and affection and service and just getting to learn and see this innocence. I think that's one thing that has always been one of my superpowers, is being being innocent and being very curious and open, and seeing his innocence and his curiosity and his openness has started to reopen and awaken that within me, which has been really, really sweet and fulfilling. And someone said this quite beautifully, that love in partnership and in family, and then when you have a child, there's like this whole other room in the house that had a secret door, that when the child is born, that secret door opens, and you're like, there's this huge, vast space of love that you never actually explored before.
Wow, that's amazing. It almost feels like you got all this beat down, and you got this little gift.
Totally. Yes.
That's amazing. And I'm glad you really said that. So I thank you, and I appreciate you for saying that, because I think a lot of people look at like business owners and entrepreneurs and public figures and like, oh, you have it all together, you have your family, you have all these restaurants, but it's a huge responsibility. And with that responsibility comes challenges. And when you look and you see, maybe brothers and sisters and people in community that once loved you now hate you and, send you death threats to you and your family, that's something that's hard. And thanks for acknowledging, like, that is hard. Like, that is abusive, and it's not right, no fair. And I think just sitting down and having a conversation and understanding is the way to go about it if you're compassionate. And, my heart goes out to you for enduring that and still moving forward in a very loving way and doing the best that you know how. I just want to tell you that I see you and I acknowledge you, and I'm sorry you were abused in that way and your family was abused in that way, because that was tough. And to just admit, like, that was hard. Thank you for just being honest about that, because other people are like, well, they don't care, they're just whatever, but just to acknowledge, like, actually that hurt. That's very powerful. So thank you so much. And you can breathe easy now.
I just want to end with an acknowledgement to you for your love and your openness and your willingness to have this conversation. And really, I just want to say, I don't know what is the truth. I just want to feel like I can honestly tell my understanding to my greatest ability to this moment, to this time, and this is what I know at this moment. And what I know is that love is the indwelling presence within all of us, and that love, the information of love, will be the thing that will continue to inform and have this world heal, and that togetherness and unity and having opposing viewpoints and still being able to love each other is the direction that we need to go, because clearly we're not all going to become the same or look the same, have the same diet, have the same religion, have the same traditions. That's absolutely going to be a diverse, and we're grateful that it's a diverse spectrum. And can we understand that there's all these different views, and can we continue to understand how we can more harmoniously live with those variations and those different ways of being and belief systems. And so I just, I'm grateful for the all-encompassing space of love. And I'll end with a Rumi poem which says, love is the bridge between you and everything.
I love that. Love it, love it, love it. Thank you so much for ending with that poem. And can you share with everyone where they can find you online?
Yes. In the spirit of my personal Instagram is Love Being Ryland, because I love being Ryland, and I'm also a love being. So love being Ryland is my personal Instagram, and then Cafe Gratitude, at Cafe Gratitude, and then at Gracias, Madre, and then at Kiss the Ground are all the three organizations that I represent and steward and serve. And thank you so much.
Thank you so much. We're just going to throw them a little love out there, make a little heart with our hands. Until next time, love yourself, love others, and love the planet. Bye.